Hey, tailgaters! Ross of the Pigskin Tales podcast here. Feel that summer heat? It's not just the sun, it's the thrill of upcoming college football season, stoking the coals. So get ready for the season, dive into the history books with Homefield, the premium collegiate apparel brand from Indianapolis. Homefield crafts incredibly comfortable gear designed with iconic vintage nods over 150 colleges. A library of history right on your chest. Homefield is the Indiana Jones of collegiate apparel, uncovering hidden gems from school archives. Unique mascots, logos, and even unforgettable moments frozen in time. Visit homefieldapparel.com and shop the archives. Homefield Apparel, where comfort, nostalgia, and the spirit of college football history unite. Again, that's homefieldapparel.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Sit there and picture the Chicxulub asteroid as a linebacker charging towards her, unsuspecting running back. The collision, a game-changing tackle, wiping out the dinosaurs. Just as the Chicxulub hit reshaped history, a memorable tackle reshaped the path of this week's guest, leading him into the thrilling realm of fantasy football. That tackle, that moment, was a reminder that every decision can be a game changer. Welcome to Fantasy Football Origin Stories, where each episode is a journey back in time to explore the unique experiences of some of the coolest and most influential people in the fantasy football industry. I'm your host, Arnie Chapman, also known as the Football History Dude. Now, I love fantasy football, and I want you to come along with me to explore the yesteryear of the armchair gridiron. So hop on board my DeLorean, and let's get this baby up to 88 miles per hour. This time to step off the DeLorean, it is the summer of 2008, and we're somewhere in the sweltering heat of Mobile, Alabama. We're at the training camp of the South Alabama Jaguars to watch this week's guest, a redshirt freshman, Craig Schmucker, fullback number 42, and listed on the school's website at 5'10", 220 pounds. A force to be reckoned with. Just like the intro, though, the Chicxulub asteroid was no joke, allegedly wiping out the dinosaurs. Now, we alluded to that collision in the intro, and we'll get into this week's interview where Craig's going to share with us a bone-shattering collision of his own, perhaps wiping out his career and leading him on to fantasy football. We'll talk about that later. Again, this week's guest is Craig Schmucker, co-host of TBQ Sports, which is branded as just a group of dudes who love talking and joking weekly about all things NFL. Hey, I can dig that, man. And that's why we have Craig on this week's episode of Fantasy Football Origin Stories. And we'll get into that in a quick minute, but first, if you have not already, you gotta mash that little subscribe or follow button on your podcast player choice. That way you get the hottest, freshest off the press episodes, each and every week. But without further ado, let's strap in, make sure Einstein has his doggy treat, go down to the local 7-Eleven for some plutonium to get our 1.21 gigawatts, and hop into the interview with Craig Schmucker. But that was a purpose. I mean, I wanted to do fantasy football from the jump. I don't know if I've said it in one of the shows you listened to, but I was going to be the fantasy football dude. But then I was like, hey, there's a million of them, so I started the football history dude back in 2018, and I've always had that itch to say, let's do something fantasy football related, and I just kind of came on me because this is called the Sports History Network that I'm part of. So it's all sports history related. I was like, fantasy football, how can you really tie that in? Fantasy Football Origin Stories. So there you go. But hey, I got to ask you this too. Maybe it's not officially we started, even though we're recording and such, because we're not live. But where are you from originally?
Mississippi.
So were you a fullback for South Alabama Jaguars for a little bit?
I was, yeah. Yeah, I was.
Okay, because I saw that. I'm like, okay, I don't know if it's the same Craig Schmucker. There's not a lot of...
No, that's me, man.
Awesome. So
I did that, and then I also played semi-pro football for a little while after that, and then I played arena football for a year
really?
For a team called the Mobile Bay Tarpons, yeah.
Well, that is awesome. This is already recorded, so I'm glad. So we got that on. I mean, what was that experience like going from even college into the semi-pro in the arena? I mean, how did you even go about that?
Well, semi-pro, like you'd think you're like, oh yeah, these guys, they didn't pan out. They're probably not that great. There's some really good players in semi-pro football. I've actually played against a few guys that were in the NFL. I still remember when I wasn't playing college football anymore. I did my first year as semi-pro and I played running back, which was different for me. But I was doing MMA training at the time. So I went from being a 230-pound fullback to being like 180 pounds. And they're like, oh, we're going to have you play running back. And they had a defensive end / interior D lineman that played DN for the Broncos and a few other teams in the NFL. And I still remember on the first play, he lined up in like shading the guard. And my guard went this way. The center went that way. They handed a dive to me and he just ate my lunch. I was laid out on the ground like this and I just couldn't do anything for a second. My center's like, you all right? And I'm like, I guess so. And then after that, we didn't run the ball a whole lot anymore. You'd notice also in semi-pro football that not everybody showed up to practice. So there's a lot of miscommunications. And I think that's what happened there. It was just a miscommunication and I got demolished in the backfield. It was terrible. But we went away from the run and I was blocking them all game after that. So that was interesting. He told my buddy I was he equated me to a mosquito because I wouldn't go away. I just kept staying in his side and I'd just keep him off my quarterback long enough for him to not get hit.
Nice. And well, so, I mean, when you went into like arena, because was that the same arena rules that I'm thinking of? Like basically the run and gun, the 50 yard.
50,
okay.
Yeah. 50-yard field and 25 yards wide. But we played in the Mitchell Center at South Alabama. So it's not quite big enough for that. So I think our field was only like 40 or 45 yards and it was the same width, but it's actually pretty interesting because it was this guy from New York that came down and funded the team, but he didn't have the money to have a team. So he paid us one time. We were supposed to get paid $250 every game. And I was still in college at the time. And I was like, I could use $250 and I love playing football. So why not get this experience? Arena football always looked fun to me. And I was playing jack linebacker in arena football. But he paid us after the first game. And then after the first game, we didn't see another cent. We played 2 home games, won those 2 games, 3 away games. Then he disappeared and we folded.
Oh, man, that's a bummer. It reminds me, actually, not even to tie it into fantasy football, but my first show, Football History Dude, the first ever guest I had, well, technically he wasn't the first guest I released, but Upton Bell, he was part of the NFL for a lot of other things, but he partially owned a team out of Charlotte in the World Football League. And he told a story about they would go, and he was even Mobile, I think, was one of them, because it seems like Mobile always has different kind of, always has semi-pro teams. They never make the NFL, but every league that starts up, they have them. But they were on the plane over there, and like they had to find a way to borrow uniforms from the local like team or something like that. And then the cops came in and stole their uniform or took the uniforms because they were defaulting on their loan. Like a bunch of like crazy, similar to like what you're saying, like just couldn't financially handle it and everything.
Yeah, you notice there's in like lower level football, there's a lot of shady stuff that goes on. Not as much in semi-pro because it's more geared towards like player development and stuff. And a lot of that's just like coaches that still want to coach, players that still want to play, but you can't get in the NFL and you're not quite in the like able to get in Canadian League or anything yet. So stuff like that. But semi-pro was a lot of fun. I went to 2 championships with the Gulf Coast Pirates and the Pritchard Falcons. Pritchard it's a city in like the Mobile area and they go to championships all the time. I don't know if they're still around because I stopped playing when I was like 26, but I'm old man now. I'm 32.
Oh, I'm with
32,
you.
So
you're a young buck compared to me, man. That's okay. I'm creeping up close to 40 and everything. So we'll just we'll leave the old stuff behind us. Being that you're down there, so Mississippi, are you a Saints fan by nature or not really?
Oh yeah, I was actually born in Marrero, Louisiana, so I'm a Saints fan, a huge LSU fan. I'd say since I got into fantasy football, my like fandom towards the Saints is like it's more loosely. a Saints fan because if my player needs to score for me to win in fantasy, it's probably okay if the Saints lose.
Yeah,
but they also haven't been that great lately either, so can't really get mad when they lose.
I'm as a Lions fan, so I mean, we probably heard that before somewhere, but yeah, as a Lions fan too, it's the same thing. Like Lions are first, like who I'm rooting for, but obviously you're always in fantasy football having a team against or a player against your team, and naturally they're always a bad defense, so they're always scoring against me. I mean, so you were there. When did the Saints win the Super Bowl? Was it the 2011 season or somewhere around that time, wasn't it?
Man, somewhere around there. I can't.
Or maybe even the 2009 season.
Oh, no. 2000. Let me see, because I remember it was it around Katrina hit?
It was right after. Well, right after then is when Drew Brees came on, and I remember like basically helped the city that one.
2010.
Okay, so the 2010 season.
2010.
2011. Okay, yeah, because I just remember watching him. I was a Colts fan because I was more of a Peyton Manning fan than a Colts fan. Again, going back to fantasy football, rooting for him and watching. But you got to give it. It's hard not to root for the Saints that year, especially after Katrina and everything. And now I just actually, the Saints are going to be an easy one to root for this year too, because like no one expects anything, but they're probably, I don't know.
The best team in their division.
Yeah, I was going to say, like it's like the Lions, that they very well could play each other in a playoff game, down the road. Yeah. So we shall see what happens there. I mean, speaking of that, let's dive into fantasy football then, I guess, because it's fantasy football origin story show. So what is? We're
getting into football too much, I guess.
No, we can dive into any football conversations you want. I mean, just go after it. And the fantasy football, like, when did you get into it? What's your first your memory? Take me back there.
Well, it was actually right after college, and I was at church one day, and a guy came up to me. He's like, "Hey, do you play fantasy football?" And I was like, "I've never tried it before." And so I got in a league with a bunch of the guys at the church, and it was like a 12-man PPR league. So it was pretty cool for back in 2012, and I loved it. I think I drafted like Steven Jackson or something that year, and he was pretty decent. And then one year, I remember I got just completely annihilated by my first like few round of picks, and it was like DeMarco Murray, Jay Ajayi, and somebody else, and everybody was just terrible. I think it was the year Murray went to the Eagles.
Okay,
and he had just had that big season with the Cowboys, and I was like, "Oh, he's gonna be good on the Eagles." I didn't know what I was doing, and but obviously I didn't know he was gonna fall off like he did either, because he did nothing on the Eagles, but. Now I just play I think I'm in a lot of leagues now. I'm in my home league with my buddy and his family and my wife. My wife actually won it a couple of years ago.
Ah, cool.
And then my buddy's wife won it last year. And my buddy, he came in last the year before last and almost came in last again this year. And then he came in last 2 years ago too. I told him if he lost again, we're going to name the trophy after him, because we got a last place trophy. It's just a toilet bowl. And then I play few dynasty leagues. I started that like 4 years ago. We started a home dynasty league with me and some of my friends. I've actually won 3 out of the 4 years in that. So that's a lot of fun. And then I play in 2 leagues with 4 more dynasty leagues with a bunch of Twitter guys. Sam Wallace is one of them. He's really cool. Sam Wallace, Ben Eby, Kyle Vanderwalk. There's a lot of guys, a lot of cool guys. Chase Gardner. It's the Dynasty League of Twitter gentlemen. So that one's a lot of fun for me. I've been rebuilding for a couple of years, but now my quarterbacks are Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, Justin Herbert, and Sam Howell. And it's a super flex. So
oh wow,
I'm getting there for now.
Yeah, depending on how some of the injury come back, and then if Richardson can do anything, you got some points coming your way, even by the legs.
Yeah, I'd say that my wide receivers are pretty decent. I got Christian Watson, Drake London, George Pickens. Running backs are not it. My running backs, I got like Rashad White, Brian Robinson. Got Javonte Williams on an injury discount, but besides that running back room looks bad. Yeah,
overall, it sounds like a very young team, though. So as you can start bolstering and trading and stuff. I actually haven't played a true dynasty league in my life. I always thought it'd be cool.
Really?
Yeah, before I even knew what a dynasty league was, I kind of took my home league to a keeper league, but it was just a regular standard. You keep, maybe it was 2 players. I think it was when we would keep 1 offense and 1 defensive player. And then we would do the whole, you lose the round that you drafted them in, but then it was always like 1 round higher or something like that. We didn't want it to be just the round itself, because we had like 30 round drafts, 16 team league, IDP. So like it was kind of crazy. We didn't
pretty
want
intricate.
Yeah. We didn't want it like some guy, Arian Foster years, where it's like, okay, now you're not giving any draft pick at all for him. We wanted to at least, at worst, you had to give, I think it was a 12 round pick. I don't remember the specifics of it. Someday I'd like to do any of that. Your home league, are you drafting live in person, or is it just online?
We're actually going to draft live in person for the home league, redraft league, and for the home league dynasty. So that's going to be fun. It's going to be our first year drafting in person for dynasty, because it just hasn't fallen where we could. But I planned this one, a couple months ago for in July. I'm like, y'all got to be able to get off work by July. There's no way that we cannot make this happen. So everybody's supposed to come over. My buddy pitched the idea that everybody should bring a case of beer and we should make a podium out of the empty cardboard boxes. And I thought that was pretty cool. And we're going to put up the draft board up on the screen, because we use Sleeper. So I'm just going to cast it to the screen and then we'll be able to follow it along on there. And I'm going to have everybody like hand in their picks. I think it'd be fun like that.
Oh, that'll be,
make it like super legit.
Right. Will this be your first ever in-person draft, or have you done one before?
I've done in-person. Actually, my first draft I did, like redraft, that church league that I was telling you about. The guy was like super serious. We had the board. You stuck the names to it and everything. So it was my first experience with fantasy football, was an in-person draft at a guy's house that I just met. It was an old guy named Mickey.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's something that we did for my league back when we first started. And for anybody that hasn't, listened to this show, I recommend finding a way to be able to do it. It's been a long time since I've actually attended a live draft, or in person, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, no, it's just way fun, because just the camaraderie alone, it's not even the draft itself. It's just like being able to get together and mess with each other and such, and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Jank on each other's picks when somebody picks somebody terrible.
Right. But then it like blows up in your face, but because really that pick ends up being like a top 5 running back or something. And
yeah,
one of those things. Also, speaking of like maybe top 5 running backs that got drafted late or everyone else dogged you out on, maybe give me your Mount Rushmore of whether it's player takes, moments of fantasy football in your short career, whatever it is, like, give me a Mount Rushmore of what you remember over the past however many years doing this.
I was a year early on Devontae Adams, drafted him. I think I got him in the 4th round of his breakout year. And that was like a huge moment for me. And ever since then, I've been a big Devontae Adams guy. I was in early on James Robinson, which it doesn't look good now, but it was good his rookie year. I'm trying to think of some other guys that really popped for me. Josh Allen. I was actually in a industry league. I think it was, I can't remember what it was, a couple years ago. And I got Josh Allen late in the draft because it was before he was good. It was his breakout year. And when you get hit on somebody in their breakout year, it doesn't happen often, but it's a game changer for your team. So that was huge for me. And, man, who else?
Maybe not even that. Maybe top moments. You said 3 out of 4 dynasty. I mean, that was a cheater one. But what? Okay, what about the? Just trying to think of the best way to go about this question. Yeah, okay. I'm not going to lead a witness here. You tell me your last Mount Rushmore pick.
All right. Well, let's see. I wasn't even going to make the playoffs actually the first year in our dynasty league, I think, and then I won like multiple games in a row. Just went on a win streak all the way to the championship. That felt great. And also, one of the worst moments for me was, I know this is not part of that question, but in the Dynasty League of Twitter Gentlemen I was telling you about, we were doing out of like the consolation bracket, whoever scored the most points would get the 113. So that's a pretty significant pick. Now we do the 213 because we saw that it was like the pick was too significant.
Okay.
To just like give somebody that pick.
Okay. I didn't pick up what you were throwing down there, and I see what you're saying. It's almost like a bonus pick at 113. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I get it.
So whoever scored the most points gets that extra pick. Now you get the 213, which is still a decent pick.
Oh yeah.
Not so great of a pick. And I lost it by like 0.4 points because I left, I think it was Devontae Parker in, and he was a last minute, they sat him last minute. And leading up to the game the whole time though, and I had a guy I could have played on the next day. Leading up to the game, the whole time they said he was going to play, said he was going to play, said he was going to play. And so I went to put my daughter down to go to sleep. Game started, checked my phone, 0 points, and I see he's out. And I was like, man, that is just terrible. And so I had to feel dumb about that for the longest time.
Yeah, it's one of those rookie mistakes where you just remind everybody, hey, make sure you check the not the injured reserve, the inactives report an hour and a half or whatever it is before the game. Make sure you double check that one.
Yeah, man. It's a tough thing to learn when you learn it that way.
We've all made a bunch of those mistakes, or the whole you don't remember to put your 1 o'clock guys. You don't put your 8 o'clock guys in the flex. You put your 1 o'clock guy in the flex, and then all of a sudden you're pigeonholed to not being able to play someone, or you don't realize. Here's my mistake it's on RT Sports. They have it set up where the waivers don't start until after week 1 or something like that. And maybe it's changed now, but my drafting strategy was always, okay, I'm not taking a kicker. I'm not even bothering. I'm just going to pick an extra receiver, running back, flyer, rookie, whatever it is. And then I'll pick up a kicker that Sunday morning from whatever it is and drop whoever got, is my last receiver. Not RT Sports, man. Nope. I ended up taking a 0 for it and ended up getting a loss on it. And I used to do that for defense too. So yeah, I've been hosed before, and that's another words of rookie wisdom. Make sure you look at your rules and your scoring system and all that type of thing.
Yeah, you always have to look. I even recently made a mistake because I joined a startup and I thought it was just tight end premium. Found out like a few rounds into the draft that it was 2 tight end premium, RB premium. Wide receivers only got half a point per reception. Running backs got 1 point per reception. So it was way different. And then the tight ends got like 2 points per reception.
Oh wow, that's way different compared to a standard PPR.
I'm in the league with a bunch of Australian guys. So it's a lot of fun. I met one of the guys on Twitter, and he invited me into the league. He needed one more, and he was like, "Oh, it's just a bunch of my Australian buddies. You come over. It's a lot of fun." They're actually pretty funny guys. The way they talk is way different too. So you just looking at the group chat, you're like, man, what are they even saying sometimes?
Yeah, I get that when I talk to different people. Well, actually not this show, but the other show. I talk to different people across the pond and such, or even, just funny because my day job. I mean, just doing this podcast thing in general is pretty cool because I talk to people all the way across the country and the world and get their different mannerisms and such. I mean, you have more of like that laid back, personality. It seems like I'm on the field though. If you're a fullback, you couldn't have been laid back except for when the guy eats your lunch, huh?
Yeah, man, that one guy laid me out so hard. I'll never forget how hard he hit me. He just completely engulfed me. He was a giant man.
Yeah, it's my local. I mean, I only played at the high school level, but one of my buddies in school, he was a grade ahead of me. He's just a massive. He was like, like you, the 230 fullback, like, the guy that's just going to lay you out. And I was linebacker, and my going against him because he was a different school. My mission was to always try to blow him up. So then basically to stop the play, it was probably 9 out of 10 times he blew me up and laid me out and everything. And he'd always talk smack.
You got your wins though.
Yeah, I got the few wins and everything like that. But speaking of, okay, now transitioning into the whole style of the Australians, the funny guys, like you kind of alluded to it earlier where I was early on Devontae Adams. I was early on this guy. Like, do you have a particular drafting style that you like to follow, or like, are you really like, what's your fantasy superpower? Maybe kind of free flow that question there.
I like to trade a lot. I'm a big trader in dynasty, so just being able to scheme up trades to upgrade my team. Like I won a dynasty league last year, and my quarterbacks were Tua, Lamar, and Deshaun Watson. And I wound up taking Deshaun Watson and packaging him with other things. And I did a 4-person trade, and I wound up getting Josh Allen.
So you had Lamar, Tua, and Josh Allen on your team then?
Now I have Lamar, Tua, and Josh Allen on my team.
Whoa. That
team, I'll send you the link to it, but it is completely stacked. I could probably look up the actual trade that happened, but it was very intricate. And also, I forgot to say on my Mount Rushmore, I got into Scott Fishbowl last year. So that was...
Oh, I did see that, yeah.
That was one of the things. And I was actually ranked first for like most of the season. And then my team crapped out in the semifinals.
Well, what did that... So I wanted to ask you, F4, when it said next to... Does that mean like that's what you finished, was 4th place overall, or...?
No, I finished... I didn't even make it because to get into the finals, it's the final 30. And I wound up getting, I don't know, it's probably like I was in the top 300, and then my team crapped the bed, so I probably was top 200-ish. But it was out of thousands of people.
Right,
so it was absolutely a ton of fun. I'm hoping I get in again this year. I got into the Warrior Bowl, which is another charity tournament. And I'm going to send in my donation, and then that way I can draft. I think the draft starts on July 17th for that league. But that's another thing that's going to be a lot of fun. I never played in the Warrior Bowl, but it seems like it's going to be for a great cause.
I was going to say, I mean, am I making an assumption, is the Warrior Bowl like to support the troops, or is it some other thing?
I think it's some other thing. It said the donation was to supported charities. It didn't say what charities. I got to look into it a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But I think it's ran from overseas because it said to donate 20 pounds or $25.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And I was like, yeah, that must be an overseas tournament. But I saw people getting into it, and I was like, oh, it seems like it's good for a good cause. I'm gonna see if I can get into that too.
Again,
applied and got in.
A good job. I mean, it's you're doing it for a good cause. Plus, it's something that you enjoy. You do for free. I mean, so it's a win-win for everybody all around. That's why it's cool what they do with the Scott Fish Bowl. And I had always heard it listening to podcasts for many years. I just never realized what it was until maybe a couple of years ago when what it was really about, kind of thing.
Yeah, they have so many, like, they do all the toys, the toy drives and all that too. It's really cool. I actually found this trade.
Let's hear it.
If you want me to rattle it off.
Let's hear this swindling in the night that you pulled.
Well, I sent a lot of stuff, but it was like sending a bunch of change for $1, if that makes sense. So I said it was actually good pieces, but so my side, I received Josh Allen. I sent Mike Evans, Deshaun Watson, Wan'Dale Robinson, a 24 first, 25 second, 26 second, 26 fourth, and a 24 second. So lots of things.
Right.
The seconds you might hit on, you might not. So they don't make, I mean, I like seconds, but it's not going to kill a deal for me to get Josh Allen. And then the next guy sent Kenny Pickett. He got Mac Jones, a second and a fourth, a 26 second and a 26 fourth. The next guy got Deshaun Watson, got Kenny Pickett, got a first and a second, and a 24 first and a 25 second. He sent me Josh Allen. And then the last guy got Mike Evans, Wan'Dale Robinson, and a 24 second. He sent Mac Jones. So he won big time because Mac Jones is just, he's a starting quarterback, but to get Mike Evans, Wan'Dale Robinson, and a 24 second, that feels like good value. But it felt like all around everybody kind of got a good deal. But I just really wanted Josh Allen to push my team over the top. But right now I'm trying to get Travis Kelce on that team too, because I have TJ Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts, who are both good, but Kelce, I think, would seal it for me to be able to probably repeat.
Oh yeah, you're talking win now mode. Yeah, sure. Long-term Pitts could turn into it, but I guess, here's...
Oh, I'm going to keep Pitts for sure.
Okay.
I'm trying to move Hawk plus Hawkinson, and right now it's Hawkinson and ETN for Harris and Kelce, Najee Harris and Travis Kelce. So I might have to add a little bit more on my side.
I was going to
but
say,
we'll see
I
how
wouldn't
it
take
goes.
that if I was the other guy. I mean, this sounds like highway robbery, possibly.
Yeah, I probably have to add a little bit, but I've built a lot of depth on that team, and that's why I was able to give away so much to get Josh Allen, so I could add more to my side and to be able to get Travis Kelce.
And all it takes too is like the right trade partner. For the listener of the show, like how do you even go about trying to secure a 4-way trade or communicate to even make something like that happen?
So I knew that the guy that I was getting Josh Allen from only had one quarterback. So he wanted 2 quarterbacks. He wanted to get Watson and Tua for me, and I told him I needed 3 quarterbacks because I had to have a backup. But I was going to look into getting another quarterback. I asked him who he would like, and he said a younger quarterback that has some potential. And I brought up Mac Jones. He said no. I brought up Kenny Pickett, and he said, yeah, he could probably work with extra stuff added. So then I went to the Kenny Pickett owner. I said, hey, what's it going to take to get Kenny Pickett? He's like, well, I don't want to not have a quarterback. And I was like, well, let me see. If I get you Mac Jones and something extra, would you do it? He's like, yeah, probably like a second. And I'm like, all right. So I went to the Mac Jones owner, and he was the one I had to finagle with a lot. He actually is a co-host on the TBQ Sports show. He hosts it, him and George mostly, and I'm just there. And he was the guy, David, that I was negotiating with. He was a tough negotiator, but I think he realized that I needed him more than he needed me. So he wanted Mike Evans, Wan'Dale Robinson, and the pick. And I was like, man, this seems like a lot, but I'll see if I can make it work. So thought about it for a while, and I was like, if I get Josh Allen, that's going to be a big upgrade from Deshaun. So let's just try and push this through. So I put all the pieces together, and I was talking to everybody separately, and then we had the group chat together, and he countered a couple times. I stayed in contact with the other guys. We got it all pushed through, and it took probably a little over a week to get that trade done. But you got to be persistent with it.
But yeah, I mean, but how cool is that? Just like that was something, a camaraderie thing that, you know, even though it was around just a trade in a sport that's a game about a game, it's something that you guys can just communicate about. And you gave me that professional transition. We got to do this right now. We got to do the DeLorean, which of course I got to show every guest. So you get to ride the DeLorean. Let's take me back. We're going to get to TBQ Sports. That was like part of the goal, how I found you and everything. Go back to maybe the first time when you're sitting there going, I want to do some kind of contribution to the fantasy football landscape, and then bring it all the way to TBQ and on fantasy football origin stories.
All right. Well, it started out because I just started getting on Twitter, and I was seeing everybody posting stuff. And then I started my Dynasty League because I saw everybody talking about Dynasty Leagues, and I asked all my buddies. We got in a Dynasty League together, and I tweet little things here and there. And then Three Bros Sports used to be a site. They messaged me, and they're like, hey, we like your takes on Twitter. Would you like to write for us? And I was like, that sounds pretty fun. So I wound up going to write for them, and then I wrote for them for a while. Then we turned into Podcasting Network, and they had me actually be the head of like the football portion of the site. So I was editing, and I had like 4 guys under me. Really, I wouldn't say under me. We all just kind of worked together, and we had pretty good content over there. And then Overtime Heroics found me because our site was breaking up, and I went and wrote for Overtime Heroics, which they have a pretty good site. They have a lot of things on there, and got a lot of traffic through there, got a lot of views on my article. So that was a lot of fun. And it was a paid, I say paid, you know how paid is in the fantasy football content creation game. It was like a few dollars here and there. You get some money. And then they actually asked me to be one of the co-hosts on their podcast because they wanted to start a fantasy football podcast / NFL podcast. So I started doing that. We did it for a while. Then we realized none of us were really even writing for Overtime anymore. So then we branched off into our own thing. And that's how we became a show. We brought, it's me, George Ruggiero, David Gillespie, and Nick Wilcox, which Nick Wilcox came on later. He's a really cool guy. And him and George are both Jets fans. So they were really excited when Aaron Rodgers got brought onto the team.
Yeah, they can have Aaron Rodgers over in that division. I don't even care anymore. We've
I
beat
bet
them.
you're happy about that, man. As a Lions fan,
Yeah,
and
except
then
for
y'all are on the uptick too.
last year, though, we swept them. We picked them off. I think it was 5 times, whatever that was. So Crybaby Rodgers can go over to New York, do whatever he wants in the Big Apple. So TBQ or current, what if the listeners never heard of you? They want to get an idea of why would I go and listen to you? Like, what different takes or what do you present to the listener or follower on YouTube?
It's just kind of like a real laid back kind of podcast. We always go way too long. So if you want something to listen to that's very long, you can listen to us. And we have a lot of fun. You could tell that we're friends on there. Nobody has any animosity towards each other. We all like to joke around, and we sometimes will go covering other things. Sometimes we'll branch off into college football or hockey and all kinds. That's why we branded as TBQ Sports, because we plan to eventually go into different avenues. Like me and Nick are thinking about branching off into solely fantasy football based podcasts, because right now it's the TBQ Sports NFL podcast. And we mostly just talk NFL, but we take fantasy football questions on the show as well, because a lot of us have a lot of background in fantasy football. And trying to think anything else. We have a lot of jokes that go on. David actually had to dance one time because he lost a bet. It's pretty terrible. I had to find that and send it to you. It's pretty bad dancing. It was pretty great. But we have a good time over there. I think that people would enjoy it. And just a lot of differing takes sometimes from each other. Because David comes from like a pure NFL background, whereas the other three of us, we have a lot of fantasy background as well.
So the listener show, again, is like best way to put it is you're hanging around at that, just chilling in the crib with a couple buddies listening, and you're enjoying talking about the game that y'all love. And then it's not like that hoity-toity professional atmosphere where you gotta red tape and such.
Yeah, not at all. You're not gonna feel like we think we're better than you at all listening to our podcast. And then we always love when people hop in the YouTube comments. We always try to reply to them live on air. So we're live every time we record the podcast. So it makes it easier to kind of mingle with your followers, talk to them, let them know that you care, and answer their questions if they have any. Or if they just if they want to challenge somebody's takes, you could be like, hey, I actually think that's kind of dumb. And then we'll try to explain why it's not dumb. And then you can tell us why it still is dumb. We're not going to be mad about it.
Yeah, which is cool in the industry to be able to do that with fans live. I mean, so if someone wants to, they're like, cool, okay, what's your schedule? How do I find you and where do I go?
Yeah, so we normally record on Wednesdays at it's 7:30, 7 or 7:30. It changes sometimes. Wednesdays at 7 or 7:30 live on YouTube, and I think it streams on Twitter as well. And you can also find me at my handle down there. And I also answer questions with it's called Team Tyler Karp. He does a lot of threads, start sit threads and stuff. Me and a few other people help answer, because it gets loaded down with questions. So we'll hop on there. If you ever have any fantasy football questions, you can hop on there. Trade questions, start sit questions when that comes around. Just any fantasy football related questions you have, you could go there, and he's always open to answer them. If he can't get to him, one of us gets to him.
And for the listener of the show, because yours truly, the host of this, made this mistake, that's 7 to 7:30 Central time zone. So just make sure you pay attention if you're us guys over here on the Eastern time zone and everything. But if they really want to, make sure that they get it, I think how that works is they can click the bell so then they get notified when you go live. Is that how that works? Okay.
Yeah, and definitely make sure to subscribe. And we're there every week. I think we've taken one off week in the past long time. I don't even know. I've taken somebody might take an off week, but the rest of us will be there.
Yeah, it's just like the show goes on, even if one of you is on vacation or something or whatever's going on in life.
Yeah.
What about in the future? Just maybe this is the DeLorean moment again. We could say 5 to 10 years in the future, whether what you think the fantasy football landscape will be like, the NFL, or just, again, open-ended question. Give me a prediction 5 to 10 years from now.
Man, I think they're going to make scoring even more crazy. It seems like we're always coming up with something different. Like I have tiered PPR where, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends all get different scoring. They have fractional scoring or decimal scoring for kickers now in some leagues. I mean, it just seems like there's going to be probably even more intricacy to everything fantasy football because it seems like they're always coming out with something new. Also, scoring just always seems like they make the game so much easier for the offense nowadays. Scoring's going to be through the roof like it always is. And Patrick Mahomes is probably going to be the GOAT by that 10 years from now, surpassing Brady.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
That's probably something. Yeah, it seems like he could probably pass him up at the rate he's going at.
Yeah, and it's one of those tough challenges to ever say about GOAT. This isn't the history show that I talk about, but yeah, anytime I bring someone on, and especially because my other show, normally it was those guys would talk about Johnny Unitas is the GOAT because of they're always more in the history books or something like that. That's a near impossible task. But I'm sorry, I just cut you off. You said one more thing that you wanted to predict.
I think that eventually they have to start valuing running backs again in the NFL. You would hope, because they're gonna realize that the top end guys are the top end guys, and you can't just plug and play anybody. Which you can plug and play people and get similar production, but there's gonna be a situation like maybe the Vikings this year are gonna realize that Alexander Madison is not Dalvin Cook, and it hinders their offense a bit. Which I think they'll still be good because they have Justin Jefferson, they have T.J. Hawkinson, and they brought in Jordan Addison, who was very good in college, but I think eventually they have to start valuing the running back again because I feel bad for those guys. And then some people are like, oh, how could they hold out? They're making this much money. Those guys don't get to play a lot. Like they don't have a lot of years in them, especially running backs. Like 30, you're probably topped out. And they say the NFL stands for not for long. And it's super true in that position. So when a guy's trying to get his bag, I don't even get upset with him, even if he's on a team that I like.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation, obviously, in general when it comes to the business. But you got your lunch taken from you, and that happens to them every day, all day long, and everything. Yeah, so I got to give it to them. As we close out, let's give the listener now. If you're going to be a different perspective than some of the other questions, the listener of the show that's like, man, I kind of want to try this whole YouTube live thing, and I'm just kind of nervous or whatever it is. Like, what recommendations would you give to them?
Oh, you can just start doing something silly with your friends. You could do a live podcast just off your phone if you don't feel like buying all the equipment. Get yourself some earbuds, prop your phone up, get on YouTube for a little bit. You answer some questions because all it takes is repetitions, and then you get more comfortable with it. I still remember the first time I was brought onto a podcast, and it was after I won that the industry league where I drafted Josh Allen, and I was absolutely nervous. I'm still nervous right now because this isn't my normal podcast. But you've made it very inviting, and I've enjoyed my time. But I don't know. I just was so nervous. My heart was beating. But after I did a few of them, I started feeling more and more comfortable. And then when I got on the podcast with who are now my friends now, but I didn't know them at the time, you just get comfortable talking to them, answering questions, and probably more comfortable in your takes, really, because you're going to be challenged a lot of the time, and you can't take stuff personal whenever somebody comes at you either.
There you go. Just don't take anything personal. Pretty good rules to live by in any arena in life, if you ask me. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Fantasy Football Origin Stories, and if you're able to gain some armchair knowledge nuggets, perhaps you'd like to jump on the wagon and join the party to start putting some of your analysis into the stratosphere. But make sure you stay away from that Chicxulub asteroid, just like Craig should have stayed away from that linebacker. Either way, to learn more, And to make sure you tell all of your friends because you know they got to listen to and they're going to love this show, their new favorite podcast, all you got to do is send them over to fantasyfootballoriginstories.com. And you'll see all of the other guests that we've had on the show. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through. Thank you for listening to this episode of Fantasy Football Origin Stories. To make sure you're the first to get the next episode, please make sure to mash that little subscribe or follow button on your podcast player of choice, then head over to the website for the show notes and more Fantasy Football Origin Stories. That's at fantasyfootballoriginstories.com. And remember, dudes, where we're going, we don't need roads. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
The Pigskin Tales podcast is all about the lesser-known pro football players. Yes, there are stories about the ones we know, like Brad Tarkenton and Harold Red Grange. But have you ever heard of Ernie Nevers? How about Dave Osborne or even Grady Alderman? These men created their own path to the NFL. How did they do it? Listen to the Pigskin Tales podcast, now streaming on your favorite music platform. Go to pigskintales.com.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcasts. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcasts. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.